The buoy tin fishery can be very intimidating for a lot of anglers. It's a lot of water with hazards to navigation and a lot of anglers. So what we're going to do right now is break down where to fish in different parts of the tides, where some dangers are, and where there could be some closures this season too. So let's go ahead and take a moment, look at the map, and break it down for buoy tin. Let's start breaking down the buoy tin fishery by talking about areas where you need to take caution and be aware of some navigational hazards. Starting off right now with Desdemona Sands, which is right here in the middle of our picture. Desdemona Sands is exposed during low tides, especially on negative and minus tides that are located in these areas here. Try and avoid those areas at all costs. There are better ways to navigate through the buoy tin fishery than crossing over Desdemona Sands. Yes, there are some places where you can cross during high tide, but it is fairly dangerous to cross there. So if you're not familiar with the area, avoid Desdemona Sands at all costs. There are a couple other areas to keep in consideration. We often talk about the shipwreck fishery, which is located right here. There's a big island that is sunken, again exposed during low tide, located right there. Now another navigation, not necessarily navigational hazard, but something we also need to be aware of here during this season is a potential closure, and the decision will have been made by this point, by the time this episode airs, along the green can line on the Oregon side of the channel, right down here in Young's Bay. This area down here at the bottom of our screen is called Young's Bay. Now there is potential for a closure, and make sure you check your regulations, from the green can line below the Astoria 101 bridge down to essentially what's called the sawdust pile. This area in here is potentially closed to all angling to allow fish to enter into Young's Bay. So what we need to do is make sure that we stay to the north, to the Washington side of this green can line here. So this area in here, you are allowed to fish. Do not fish south of that green can line until you hit the edge of it. Down here, an imaginary line right there that goes to about the sawdust pile. So let's go ahead and start breaking this down a bit more. On bigger tides, the fish will move above the bridge on up to the shipwreck area and Tongue Point. Again, the shipwreck is located right here, and there are two channels that go around that sunken island that's located right here. And these fish will separate onto either side of the island itself. Now on the Oregon side during high tide, a great indicator, and one thing that a lot of us pay attention to, are these anchored up ships that are located, you can barely see here on Google Earth. What you can do is if their stern is pointed upstream, you know the tide is still pushing in. As soon as these ships start to swing, you'll see their stern start to swing around while they're on anchor. Now is the time to start fishing this area right in here. That is a great time to fish right along Desdemona Sands in this stretch all the way down below the bridge, again staying north of that green can line that's located right here. As the tide begins to shift, turn your boat around and start facing downstream and troll either on the north side of Desdemona Sands here on the Washington shoreline or on the south side of Desdemona Sands over on the Oregon side. Keep in about 15 to 40 feet of water along the stands, along that break, and that's where you're going to find most of your fish as the tide begins to swing. As you start to get towards the middle of the outgoing tide, you'll find a lot of anglers right here fishing that Red Roof and Church Hole area. And over here on the Oregon side, they'll shift down from the green can line, down over here to Hammond, and on down towards Buoy 22, located all the way down here. On some of the bigger outgoing tides, you'll see guys start pushing all the way out towards Buoy 10 itself. Now, the Buoy 10 fishery has really changed in the last few years. Not too many people are fishing out here near Buoy 10 anymore. The water's big, it's deep, and so people are avoiding that area and fishing in sections of the river that are shallower because that condenses the fish. The Buoy 10 fishery this year is second to none. These are the good old days. This fishery will extend all the way through middle of September with almost 1 million coho expected to return. If you've never come down here to experience it, make sure you take the opportunity to do so.